We are on the verge of a third world war, and the New World Order and the deep state can't get enough of it. World War III is approaching. Pro-Putin channel simulates massive nuclear strike on London would instantly vaporize 850,000 people. A Russian television channel loyal to Vladimir Putin has simulated a massive nuclear strike on London. The English language voiceover explains a nuclear weapon explodes over London. In this documentary, we explore the devastating consequences of this catastrophe. The movie was tweeted out by Moscow News. Here is the translation from the tweet. Russian media publishes a simulation of a nuclear strike on the British capital, London, with a charge of 750 kilotons. World War III is approaching.
A fireball as hot as the sun rapidly expands, reaching a radius of 950 meters. Anything trapped inside this fireball is instantly vaporized. In our simulation, the epicenter of the explosion is at Westminster. People within that radius won't even feel anything because the nerve impulse transmission speed is slower. Within 5 kilometers of the epicenter, the blast radius. City of London, Camden Town, Kensington, Brixton. These areas will receive the most destruction. Buildings will be destroyed and debris will fill the streets, creating extremely dangerous conditions for everyone in the vicinity. Given the population density in central London, the initial death toll could exceed 250,000 people and around 600,000 injured. Within a radius of 10 kilometers, the radiation will cause third-degree burns. Within that radius, anything that can burn will catch fire. Gas stations, automobiles, power substations, gas infrastructure. Explosive facilities will explode and amplify the effect of the devastation over a huge area, including areas from Camden to Greenwich and Islington to Wandsworth. According to various estimates, a further 450,000 people will die from burns, debris injuries, or radiation sickness, and over 1 million will be traumatized.
And this current U.S. federal government, NATO, the EU, anyone that is cheering on this war to continue between Ukraine and Russia, all want this to happen. Ukrainian President Zelensky openly campaigns for Democrats in battleground states. Harris surrogate Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro joins him to sign bombs. While Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky is in the United States begging for more U.S. taxpayer dollars and munitions, he appears to be using some of his time to stump for the Harris campaign and attack Donald Trump and his running mate J.D. Vance on American soil. Zelensky also joined Harris surrogate Democrat Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro for a tour of an ammunition factory in the Keystone State. Zelensky had time for a sit-down interview with the New Yorker and directly went after Trump and Vance. Here's what he said. My feeling is that Trump doesn't really know how to stop the war, even if he might think he knows how, Zelensky said in an interview. Zelensky also belittled Vance, calling him way too radical. He said, I don't take Vance's words seriously, because if this were a plan, then America is headed for global conflict. It will involve Israel, Lebanon, Iran, Taiwan, China, as well as many African countries, Zelensky said. Here is Vladimir Zelensky, literally in Pennsylvania, with Governor Josh Shapiro signing bombs. Ukraine is simply a puppet that NATO, the EU, and these globalist psychopaths are using to usher us into a World War III nuclear exchange scenario. And they want that, and they don't want it to stop. That's why they need Kamala Harris. And that's why you literally have the president of Ukraine in Pennsylvania shilling for Kamala Harris. And meanwhile, while this is all happening and we are on the verge of World War III, Joe Biden speaks to the UN one final time and can't even talk. As the world burns, Joe Biden can barely speak, slurs his words, attacks Russia, and pushes for more war in last UN speech. Well, of course he is, because that's why he was installed. Joe Biden addressed the United Nations General Assembly on Tuesday. It was his last speech to the international body. Old Joe looked tired and lost as he mumbled and lied his way through his final speech as the world burns. Joe has a particularly difficult time reading the teleprompter these days and frequently mashes his words together. Biden then went after Russia and Putin and pushed for more war.
I truly believe we're at another inflection point in world history, where the choices we make today will determine our future for decades to come. Will we stand behind the principles that unite us? Will we stand firm against aggression? Each of us in this body has made a commitment to the principles of the UN Charter to stand up against aggression. When Russia invaded Ukraine, we could have stood by and merely protested. Putin's war has failed, and at his core aim. He set out to destroy Ukraine, but Ukraine is still free. He set out to weaken NATO, but NATO is bigger, stronger, and more united than ever before. But we cannot let up. The world now has another choice to make. Will we sustain our support to help Ukraine win this war and preserve its freedom? Or walk away and let aggression be renewed and a nation be destroyed? I know my answer. We cannot grow weary. We cannot look away. And we will not let up on our support for Ukraine. Not until Ukraine wins a just and durable peace in the UN Charter.
Translation: more and more and more and more and more war to come. And they don't want it to stop because it fills their pockets and it gives them more power. Democrats don't want it to stop. The elites don't want it to stop. The Uniparty doesn't want it to stop. NATO, the EU, the New World Order wants it to continue because they need more global destabilization so they can usher in a global police state prison planet. Well, lawmakers appear to be preparing for something. Take a look at this. Lawmakers prepare for mass casualty event, push constitutional amendment to undermine election integrity, and control House vacancies in a national crisis. As political tensions rise in the United States, Congress is preparing for the possibility of a major mass casualty event that could dramatically change its makeup. With recent assassination attempts and increasingly heated public discourse, lawmakers are considering drastic steps, including a possible constitutional amendment that would allow for the direct appointment of House representatives in the event of mass vacancies. On Thursday, during a subcommittee hearing on preparing for the future by learning from the past, lawmakers gathered to discuss the amendment. Under the proposed legislation, elected representatives would be required to compile a list of potential successors deemed qualified to serve in Congress. In the event that a House member's seat becomes vacant due to death or incapacitation, a state governor would have only 10 days to appoint someone from this list, allowing for a replacement until a special election can be held. Although intended as a temporary measure until special elections are held, it raises the question of whether unforeseen emergencies could arise, delaying the election, allowing unelected representatives to remain in office longer than expected. The bill could set a dangerous precedent, particularly in a time when public trust in the electoral process is already fragile. Well, obviously, they are preparing for something. It could be legitimately a nuclear exchange. It could be a false flag event. It could be something that's completely staged in order to appear like an emergency situation. Or they could just launch more assassination attempts on their political opponents And they can install pretty much anybody they want in power to take full control of the House and the Senate at will. What I do know is that these people can't be trusted. And what I do know is that false flags are definitely real. And what I do know, this is exactly how police states are installed. Mass destabilization, mass catastrophic events, in order to give an excuse to usher in martial law, sacrifice freedoms for security, and like they did in 2020, 2021, sacrifice freedoms for so-called health security. They want World War III. They want total devastation. They want total chaos. It'll give them the police state global prison planet powers they've always wanted. What I do know is that they publicly and openly advocate for World War III, and they want it. That's why they hate Trump. That's why they hate MAGA, because we want to prevent it. My name is Drew Hernandez for the Gateway Pundit, and you have been on watch with Drew Hernandez.